Well, welcome everyone to the Late Afternoon Show. I'm your host, Nelson Murray. We have got an awesome show in store for you guys today. But first, I just wanted to take a quick moment to say, putting on a conference like this, as many of you may know, this is not an easy thing to do. So I just wanted to congratulate Jesse and Elaine on year 2 of the Layers Conference. Yeah. Now, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with these kinds of shows. Normally, the host would come out and they would recite a monologue and kind of get the audience warmed up. But I am not about to attempt my stand-up debut following John Hodgman. So I would just rather we get straight to our guests, all of whom are super awesome. So let's just get straight to it, okay? Let's see. Our first guest of the evening is the reason why I bailed on trying to write a monologue. He's an author, an actor, a comedian, a podcast host, and he does it all while running Windows. Please give a huge round of applause to the incredibly talented Mr. John Hodgman.
Boy, can you hear me? Jesse was right. You're an asshole. Oh, so aggro. I don't know what to do with you.
Well,
thank you for that nice introduction.
Absolutely, thank you for coming.
I was being sarcastic, in case.
We've been trying to have you on the show forever, so thank you for joining us.
Yeah. I mean, there was that one time it didn't work out, and then there was my plane was diverted.
That's right.
But no, I love the show. I watched it every night. It's really special to be here. I think what you're doing for culture is really important.
Thank you. I wanted to start with something that I think maybe some other folks find interesting too. You studied literature in college, is that right?
I studied literary theory rather than literature.
So theoretically, you studied
literature was too practical.
Okay.
I was more interested in the ideas of books than actual books.
Than actually reading.
Yeah. I like the idea of reading books.
Takes too much time.
And the literary theory department at Yale was like, we have the program for you. You'll never have to read an actual book. We'll just talk about them as if they existed.
Well, your style of comedy is very unique. It's oftentimes very story driven. There's not a lot of set up punchline like you get.
Sometimes no laughs.
Well, like I said, it's very unique.
Yes.
So I'm curious, did you have some comedic idols when you were growing up, or did you have literary? Who did you look up to?
Well, Andy Kaufman was a big inspiration for me. In the same way and then a British comedian, Peter Cook, both of whom were rather absurdist and not narrative or story-driven.
Okay.
But both were people who were really, really comfortable with making the audience really uncomfortable, and not pushing at them trying to get laughter, but sitting back and waiting for them to come around to whatever weird world they were building. And that was very intriguing to me. And on the subject of Disneyland, Steve Martin, I don't think gets enough credit for being as weird as he was as a stand-up comedian. And so I really loved him as well too. And of course, he was working a game where he read as very straight-laced. He was young at the time, but even as a young guy, he looked like a middle-aged guy, wearing a suit and read as authority, and he was being very subversive in that way. But then I was, Richard Pryor on that.
Oh yeah.
I painted my room with Live at the Sunset Strip in the background once when I was younger, and just some combination of his brilliance and the paint fumes really changed my brain forever. And he was doing something, much more narrative.
Yeah,
he went from doing straight joke setups to longer stories. And again, it was just this reminder of you can do whatever you want. And, I came to comedy, if I've even arrived there, via an unusual route by first wanting to be a serious writer of serious short stories about people with feelings, and then writing humor for the internet, and then writing like this really arch fake trivia, which I still love, but can't do anymore for whatever reason. My brain is different now, to The Daily Show and everything else, and all of a sudden it was expected that I would have a stand-up act, and truthfully I didn't, and I had to figure out what I wanted to do on stage, and that's changed.
I went back and I was reading some of your work from McSweeney's from '99, 2000.
Yeah, I had ordered that be destroyed, but I'm glad that you were able to find it.
It still exists.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about your life as an actual literary agent, and
Right.
how did that turn into the articles you wrote?
Yeah, after I was graduated from Yale with a degree in literary theory, I discovered that no one gives a shit about that. And New York had not prepared a beautiful, artfully furnished garret for me to do my thinking about books in, with a hefty stipend to keep me in absinthe or whatever. And in fact, I moved to New York for reasons, and had to get a job, and was eating salt and pepper sandwiches and going through the New York Times classified ads just to date me. And there was an ad to be a receptionist at a literary agency. And that seemed cinematic enough of a thing to do. So I applied, and I wanted this job because the literary agency was located in an old townhouse that had been owned by the Astor family and had been their private bank. And there was a huge walk-in vault in the back, and there was wood paneling everywhere, and ferns, and overstuffed chairs, and dark corners. And I'm like, I can see myself taking a nap on that couch. Please give me this job. It was a weird interview tactic to take. But I got the job, and I took a lot of naps there. But it was like, I took the job because it looked like what a book publishing concern should look like. But in fact, they were actually doing, what I realized was they were actually representing actual authors to actual publishers, and they were taking it seriously, and it was not just a joke for them. And that it wasn't wise for me to treat it as a joke either.
Yeah.
So I tried my best to do it for a couple of years, and ended up selling some books, but my heart wasn't in it, so I left.
But then you did turn it into a joke by creating this really
I turned it
interesting
into
character.
a joke by writing for McSweeney's an advice column called Ask a Former Professional Literary Agent, where I would give people all the wisdom that I had gleaned from my 7 long years of working in book publishing. And people were calling in, or writing in, I should say, with advice, looking like what's the best kind of book to write? What kind of hat should I wear? Beret, obviously. Best kind of book to write. At that time, in the late 90s, it was like vampires or serial killers. And that's still pretty much true now. But why there hasn't been a big vampire versus serial killer book? There probably has been, right?
That's
So I don't
true.
know about it. But
That's
it's like, and throw some werewolves in there, that'd be good.
It would be good.
Yeah. And then people started writing about their love life and their knee pains and stuff. And I took it upon myself to answer all those questions, doing as little research as possible, but trying to find some reasonable answer anyway. And that's why it started being this deranged expert character that was my books, and then my first part on The Daily Show.
And that brings me to the next question now, which is you've operated across so many different, mediums.
Yeah.
You've written, you've obviously done televisions, you've done film, you've done voiceover work.
That's correct.
How do you find yourself able to deliver the John Hodgman style of comedy through all these different mediums? It's clear that you don't.
I try my best not to deliver the John Hodgman style of comedy.
Anywhere you go?
Because everyone would go, oh, no, thank you. No.
Do you prefer certain mediums?
Well, it was interesting. I was just talking to this gentleman about my podcast, Judge John Hodgman podcast. Who's that gentleman that I was talking to? What's your name again? Yeah. Right, so Dan and I were talking about, and he said, why, it's funny you did that whole thing about not being on television, but you have this podcast, the Judge John Hodgman podcast. And he said, don't you like it? And I said, oh, I enjoy it very much. And truly, podcasting is a much more intimate medium than television, as is radio, because you're in people's houses, you're in people's heads. And when you listen to a podcast, you're listening to your friends talk in the other room or in the car with you, And I love talking the people. The Judge John Hodgman podcast is it's me. I am a judge who settles real life disputes between people who call in via Skype until we find something better. And it's like who will do the dishes first and whether a hot dog is a sandwich and all kinds of stuff like that. The answer is no, by the way. A hot dog is not a sandwich. I don't give a shit what the dictionary says. Thank you. A lone clap.
Solo clap.
We'll be talking later. And the people who call in from all over the world are amazing, and I love talking to them, and I love getting to know them, and it's a very intimate thing. And arguably, the Judge John Hodgman podcast, while not being the largest podcast in the world, is reaching an audience that is certainly comparable to certain cable TV shows, maybe even Married. I'm not sure. I don't know what their audience really was, but television is getting so fragmented now that an average audience is very small. So for all those reasons, I should really just love being a podcaster. But God, the fuck damn it, I want to be on TV so bad. It's I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is.
But obviously you have been on TV.
I apologize for swearing. I know that there are young people in the crowd.
Swear more. I don't think they're.
No, I know. I met all the. Believe me, I've met some of the young people, the interns. Whenever I go into a room, the weird 14-year-olds find me. It's the mustache. Yeah, there's one now.
Yeah, we put them all in the
very
front,
now he's taking my
too.
picture. Hello. Hello, tweens.
How did you end up finding your way? I think many of us are familiar. We're probably all huge fans of The Daily Show.
Yes, me too.
Yes. How did you end up finding your way to the show? How did the show end up finding you? And what influence did that have on John Hodgman's trajectory?
Not very much influence
Nothing.
at all. No.
No.
What? It changed my life completely.
How did that happen? Did that come about as a result of your first book?
Yes.
Okay.
So I wrote the first book. I was asked, I believe that Jake Gyllenhaal canceled. And I was asked.
Is that true? Are you serious?
Yes. And I've thanked Jake for this. Jake, like he's my friend. I met him backstage 5 years later when he finally came on The Daily Show. And
This is 2005.
Yeah, I went on the show in November of 2005, 11 short years ago.
What?
To promote the book because Jake Gyllenhaal canceled. And I had just come off of I flew from San Francisco. I had to interrupt book tour because it was a spur of the moment booking. And I had just given a reading from the book at Booksmith in the Height. And there were 5 people there, one of whom was Dave Eggers, and then another of whom was Jesse Thorne, who's my co-host on Judge John Hodgman, whom I had not met before then. And then 3 weirdos who didn't know where they were. And then I got this call saying, come back, you have to be on The Daily Show. So I flew back, went on the show.
Yeah.
We had a nice time talking about hobos taking over the United States government. And then I immediately flew back to resume the book tour in Seattle. And when I got to Seattle, there were 400 people there. And it was all because of the show.
Of course, yeah.
It was a complete change of fortune. I had gone from being 16,000 on the Amazon list to 7 overnight. It really made me appreciate why TV is so powerful, even in a time when we all here, I'm sure, think of TV as this impending dinosaur or a total dinosaur now. It's still a meaningful part of people's lives. And while radio and podcasting and social media can be very intimate, television, and this is something I noticed after I was on television, has still this conjurer's power over an
It is
audience.
magical, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's an authority that, this magical box that brings information into my home.
It's still very weird and powerful.
Yeah.
And Jon Stewart said, you should like this, and a bunch of people suddenly showed up, and it was incredible. And of course, that put me on the radar for the audition for the Apple ads.
Gotcha, okay.
So what happened was John asked me back to be on the show in a semi-regular capacity the following January of 2006, and then I auditioned for the ads in March, and then I started doing them in April. So that was a huge 6-month upending of my whole life in a very positive way.
And you became one of the Daily Show correspondents, one of these.
I was a contributor. So like Louis Black and then Kristen Schaal,
Okay.
and Larry Wilmore too. We didn't live there. We would come in to once or twice a month, each
Okay.
of us, to do our segments. We would write our own segments with the writers.
Oh, okay.
But we weren't employees of the show, because the correspondents are employees of the show.
Gotcha.
So they're there all day long, every day, whether they're working or not.
Right.
So for me, I was always just a deadbeat freelancer, which is how I like
And
it.
then you would get these magical phone calls? And
No, they weren't magical, just regular through the telephone.
Oh, joking.
Yeah,
My mistake.
yeah. And, they would say, I had a schedule, and I would do it every other week or so.
Yeah.
And then as I got busier, that would be less and less, but we'd still do it like once a month. Yeah, and we would just plan it out.
What is we all know you, obviously, and if you didn't before, you've seen the ad, the Get a Mac ads. We all know you.
Yeah, you all know me now. I've been up here for 2
from
hours.
those ads. The campaign is not that old. It's very recent still.
It's very old.
It's
It's 10 years ago that it
It's 10 years
started.
ago.
That
That's
thing
right.
you
That's
saw
true.
was me 10 years ago.
That's true.
What is your age?
What do you think? How old do you think I am?
Well, I presume you're 45 like me, like everyone else in the world. There's no one younger than me.
That's true.
Right, Jesse?
Right.
That's right. Thank you, Jesse.
Very true.
Well, I'm not gonna take your bait. How old were you 10 years ago? Let's see if I can do the math.
Oh, 10 years. Well, I was. I was
This
eight.
should be easy.
10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was 19.
You were 19.
I was 19. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were in college, having your thoughts and feelings and thinking they were important and partying and stuff.
That is all
But
very true.
you probably weren't watching a lot of broadcast television to see these ads. They probably got into your life a little bit, but you were, I hope, hugging and kissing humans and not watching my ads.
I was actually trapped in Apple's infinite white world like you were at one point.
You were?
I was.
When?
I don't know if you've ever seen this. You
Oh, wait.
probably didn't know
I
about
didn't
this.
see you there. Oh, hi.
That's right.
I thought that was Justin, but
This is-
obscured by the plant. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, no. This is the only reason why Jessie allowed me to show up here today is because she.
Were you in one of the ads?
I was in not an ad on TV. Come on, look
Oh,
at no.
then who
Look, am I
cares?
on TV now? No, not on TV. But I introduced the world to what was the fastest and most powerful iPhone in 2009.
Oh, really?
I did, yeah, on the web.
On the web.
On the web.
But is this a Photoshop, or did this actually happen?
No, well, this happened, an hour before the show when
Oh,
I did
okay,
it in
got it.
Photoshop. Yeah.
Oh,
no-
wow, that's great.
Yeah, we'll get that off the
You, me, Jeff Goldblum,
That's oh
Justin,
my gosh,
and
I never
Richard
thought
Dreyfuss.
about
We should
that.
all have dinner sometime.
That's true. Please arrange that. Please arrange that.
You don't want that.
Have you had a dinner with Jeff Goldblum?
No. But I was at
Or is it Richard Dreyfuss that you're concerned about?
I was at the hotel that I was talking about in my story.
Yeah.
Just having a drink with my friend Paul, who I later would stay with. And Jeff Goldblum wandered in to the lobby, and there was a piano in there. And he was there with, I would say, he's got to be 60, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And he was there with a woman who looked like she was 19. And he sat her down, and then he went to the piano and just started playing soft jazz. And there was no one else in the lobby. It was one of the most surreal experiences I've ever had.
That seems like the most appropriate thing to happen when he walks into a room.
Yeah, and I can't do a Jeff Goldblum other than a lot of
Right.
head touching. But then he noticed, he knew Paul, and then he came over, and he was as Goldbloomy as can be. And I asked him to play the end credits theme from Buckaroo Banzai, and he didn't remember it, and I was deeply disappointed. See, this is a younger crowd than you think.
Well, so tell me about what was your impression of Apple prior to being given this audition to do this campaign?
Oh, I had the 128K Macintosh when it came out in 1984. I convinced my dad to buy it. I saw
It's got
that.
some street cred.
Well, yeah, I wish I still had it. I don't know where it is now. But I saw the Big Brother ad. God knows how I saw that thing because it was on the Super Bowl, and I don't watch that. But certainly not as a 13-year-old. Do you know what I mean?
I don't. Did that ad only ever air once? Is that like one of the pieces? I feel like that's a true. Okay, so
Somehow I saw it though, and I saw it. I had to have seen it live because we didn't have a VCR or anything. But there it was, and it really struck me. And And there had been a lot of back and forth about whether to get an Apple or IBM at that time.
Yep.
That were the big fights that were going on in my 8th grade world. And then the Macintosh came out, and I'm like, oh, that's what I'm going to have.
Yeah.
And I just logged a lot of time on that Macintosh, and then I got I don't think I did the 256K. I bumped up to the SE once I went to college. And then after college, I got a Mac PowerBook 145B. And then we were using Windows computers at the literary agency. And when the 145B bit the dust, I got a Dell. It was a dark period.
Dude.
It was a dark period. First I got a Gateway 2000, and then.
Did it come in a cow box?
Yeah, it did.
Yes.
It did.
Did you go to?
That's why I got it.
Did you go to a Gateway store?
No.
Where you couldn't buy anything?
No.
Do you remember? This is
I
the
remember
meanest retail experience ever. If you guys don't remember these stores, did you ever go to one of those?
No, but I remember hearing about them.
It's like it was like a 3D catalog. You just go in, there are all
You'd
the
say
computers.
this, and they would order it for you
and
from there.
you just go home.
Because
and
they
it
had internet
leaks.
or something. Yeah, I had some time in the wilderness with some PCs. Look, people are actually walking out now. They're so mad.
It's because you brought up Dell. That's why.
But Steve was in the wilderness too at the time.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, had one of those pizza box apples. What were they called again? Doesn't matter.
You're not talking about with the iBooks.
No. The flat white ones. They had like a name like Quadra, like something like that. What? No.
This is the room to get the correct answer.
Well, yeah. Now you're making up words.
Quintessent, I think it was.
Yeah, it was just Apple. I think we all kind of felt like maybe Apple wasn't going to keep going.
Sure.
At that time.
Sure.
And my friend Jonathan had a PC, so I was like, I'll give this a try. I never really liked it. And then Jonathan went back to Mac after Steve came back, and it was obvious, immediately.
Yeah.
With the introduction of the iMac and the candy colors, and then the aluminum, was it titanium first or aluminum PowerBook?
Titanium first. The painted titanium.
Yeah. And it's like amazing to think about what the consumer electronics world was back then.
Yeah.
Because the first time I ever saw a titanium PowerBook was at Nobody Beats the Whiz on Broadway. And if you've ever been to New York, Nobody Beats the Whiz was this totally run-down hole of an electronics place. And it was a similar thing, like you couldn't buy anything. You had to fill out a ticket that would be sent through a pneumatic tube to the back, and then it would come out, like a monkey would bring it out in a basket or something. And the PowerBook 145B that I bought, I got at some, it was literally like a used car salesman guy. Like I walked into this place and it was called like Microtown or something on South Park Avenue, and it was this totally anodyne business environment. There was a prototype for the Newton on display, but otherwise no other computers were visible. And a guy came out and sat me at a desk and he said, "Great, what kind of computer are we going to put you in today?" And I was like, "Well, I just wanted to look around." He's like, and it was this hard sell approach.
Oh, God.
One-on-one. I felt like I was being recruited into Scientology or something. And finally he said, "Well, here's this 145B. I think this will be good for you." It had a trackball. I guess that was my requirement.
that was the threshold.
Yeah. And he's like, "And do you want a built-in modem?" And I'm like, I would like to be a part of the future, yes.
What year is this? Do you recall?
Well, I had just moved to New York, so I would say it was 1994.
Oh,
right?
okay.
So there were no Apple stores.
Yeah.
And it was just one of these heart-rending, gut-sinking feelings where you're being taken advantage of, and you're paying more than you should. And then you had the pleasure of, after he goes back to write it all up, to hear him bragging to his colleagues about how much he fucking soaked you for, because he upsold you on the built-in modem. Like they were, and they caught me looking. Like I just sort of wandered. Like he left me for a long time. I wandered to this part of the office, and he's like, "Where do you hear what I sold this for?" And that's what buying an Apple
He
computer
said
was
that?
like. Yeah, yeah. Oh, he was bragging about how much he had overcharged me for it. And obviously it wasn't direct sales, you know, that's what buying
Right.
an Apple computer was then.
Right, right.
So I think it was partly that experience that made me feel like I'm never going to go back to that again.
Yeah.
I can buy a computer and a cow box from the internet. I'll do that. But then things got better, and I bought, you know, whatever, a PowerBook or whatever in 2004 or so, and I never looked back.
Never looked back.
Yeah.
So 2005 rolls around, September of 2005. When did the first ad?
The first ad came out in April of 2006. So my
2006,
book came out
okay.
in 2005.
So this was right after the launch of iPod Nano in end of 2005.
I'll
I
take
think.
your word for it.
Sure, there you go. So these ads came about, and they were the switch to Intel, I believe, right? They
I think that had already
correlated with that
happened.
a little bit.
It was the transition from PowerBook to MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pro, okay.
Because in the first round of shooting, Justin and I both got free MacBook Pros. And I was like, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me.
So you're now a part of the collective consciousness, especially among the sort of tech world for this ad campaign. What was it like actually producing those? Was this a situation where I was looking up, there's a Wikipedia page, a pretty robust Wikipedia page dedicated to this campaign.
Yeah, I work on it pretty hard.
So you,
Get in there.
how many of
Justin's always fucking it up, and I gotta go in there and fix it.
those, just taking credit away from you for things?
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
How many of them did you end up shooting? Do you know? Do you remember?
My estimate would be that we shot 180 or so.
Holy
Because
cow.
they aired 60 or so, and that was pretty much the ratio.
Yeah.
We would shoot 3 and pick one of the 3. And we would pick one of the 3, Steve would pick one of the 3. He was
then those
very
were not
hands-on,
often
though.
not
I
the
never
same?
met him. I know that he was very hands-on. What's that?
Were they oftentimes not the same? The ones you liked, the ones that the crew liked, and the ones Steve liked?
No, we liked them all. Every one of them was perfect. Why?
Sorry. That's what I meant to say.
These-
I'm curious, did you have any influence on the British ones? Or were they being done simultaneously?
No, and many of the British ones early on used the same scripts that we were using. The difference, of course, was that they cast those 2 guys. Why am I blanking on the names? Mitchell and Webb, right? David Mitchell and Robert Webb, right? Incredible comedic duo from England to do them.
Yep.
And those were not television ads in England because they were not allowed to, on British television, you were not allowed to directly compare products. So those
okay.
were web and print ads over there. But no, I had no control over anything. That's what I loved. Are you kidding me? Like, I got this job and was essentially, when I got the job, I was told that I was going to LA the next day. And I was shipped in the most beautiful crate
Right.
to Los Angeles and uncrated on this giant white stage
Yeah.
and told to go. And it was my first experience with on-camera acting.
Are you serious?
Yeah, other than The Daily Show.
Right,
But
right,
The Daily
right,
Show is
right.
a very specific kind of format that I had gotten used to.
Wow.
They
okay.
that's why I thought I was going to get the job, because they were just presuming I could do it. And eventually I was just like, well, they gave me the job, so I better work hard. But the beauty of it was, of being on-camera talent, is it's not that they trust that you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's they are so careful they distrust you so greatly that they will reduce all of your decisions to about 2.
Right, you have none. You have no choice. Yeah.
You're not allowed to go walk over
I recall a bit
and
of
get a piece of popcorn for yourself, because you either might slip and fall, or you might be an actor and just go crazy and decide to leave. You know, like, so it was such a free, as a writer and as a creator and as
Yeah.
a parent, who is someone who's always in control.
Yeah.
It was incredibly liberating to essentially just surrender.
So you did enjoy that?
Yeah.
You acknowledged that it was crazy, but you were just like, okay, great. No.
Yeah.
Nothing for me to do.
Also it's an incredible amount of fun. And
Did you know Justin Long, or had you met him or worked with him in any capacity prior to that? Or
no.
did you guys literally meet
no,
on the set?
I had seen him in the B horror movie Jeepers Creepers which is what I said to him when I met him. And he said, he took a little offense to that and countered by saying, I haven't seen your work, but my parents are big fans. By the way, Richard and Wendy Long are wonderful people.
Okay. So that was a compliment.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it was creatively, financially, professionally transformative in my life. I had a great time every time I did it. I'm still very close friends with Justin and with the director of the ads. And you know, there was a millisecond, and I probably shouldn't reveal this, but fuck it, where there was some talk a couple of years ago about getting the band back together. It didn't go very far because I think everyone realized what I already knew was those ads are pointless. You know, they just don't.
We've moved on.
We did it. You know, we made the entire ad campaign irrelevant, or Apple did by inventing the iPhone. So, John, whatever. I still have those glasses. If they ever want me to do it, I'll do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
please give a round of applause to Mr. John Hodgman.
Thank you very much.
We have more guests to get to, but can you stick around?
Yeah.
Can you?
I want to be your Andy Richter.
Keep your mic on and
I even found a chair for myself.
just heckle us from the sidelines. That would be really fun. Okay, our next guest is he's a writer and a designer from Brooklyn, New York. He's worked with Lyft, with Nuzzle, Sprig, Y Combinator, Envato, TED, Google, and more. Today, he is the product designer at Copper and is also a founder and editor of a design publication called The Industry. Let's see how many more jobs he can rack up during the course of the interview. Please welcome Jared Erondu.
Hello.
Oh, well,
Watch your step.
I thought there was another step there.
Yeah.
Really not. Hi.
There is.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem.
All right.
All right.
So, Jared, my first question for you is, you've got a long resume, my man, and you're a pretty young guy. When do you sleep?
Probably like 11:30 p.m. now.
Okay. So you just work really hard. When
I
you're awake.
imagine you were expecting like a 4 or 5 a.m. answer.
Why?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I used to average like 3 or 4 a.m. until I got a girlfriend. What happened was she likes to sleep at like 10.
Okay.
Which is terrible for me because that's when I want to continue working.
Right.
But relationships are all about compromises, and I compromised from 4 a.m. to like 12, 10, 11, 12. So she still goes to bed before me, but yeah, I finally sleep. So that's good. I got like a really benefit thing out of the relationship.
There you go.
What time do you get up?
Anywhere between, I have like 2 wake-up times. I have the time I wake up,
Yeah.
and then I have the time that I get out of bed.
I hope that's a long.
It's
Yeah, wake up slowly.
Yeah. So wake up's like 7, 6:45, 7. Get out of bed is like anywhere between 8 and 10.
I think you're doing everything right.
Yeah.
Are you one of these guys that trains yourself to ignore alarms? Like you just snooze, 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 snooze to the point where you just don't even hear your phone or whatever it is in the morning?
I have alarms set with 15-minute intervals. So it's like 7, 7:15, 7:30, 7:45. And then depending on whether or not I have meetings that following morning, I turn on and turn off some. So it's kind of like, it's a surprise every morning because I forget what I did the night before, right? But yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, there are a lot of things I want to ask you about here. The first of them is about design leadership.
Yeah.
You've written a lot about design leadership for the industry, or you've edited some articles about this topic, about the UI, UX boom that began following the release of the iPhone, the jobs boom in that sort of market, and the subsequent maturing of the software capabilities on mobile devices and hardware capabilities. Yeah. Why is it that now more than ever you feel like it's the time for companies to invest in leadership roles specifically having to do with fostering design?
Wow. That's a big question. That's a big transition
I'll
from
take
like
this
the
one.
alarm clock.
Mr. Hodgman.
What was the question again?
The question is why? Well, I mean, yeah, but you've written a lot about this, and I'm curious what your thinking is on it. Why leadership focused specifically on design, as opposed to sort of just maybe a more general creative director role or something like that?
Yeah. So when I moved to San Francisco like 3 years ago, my first role was a product designer at a startup called Amada Health that focuses on preventing preventable diseases. At the time, we were focusing on type 2 diabetes. They've since extended to arthritis and other conditions. However, when I joined, my boss was ex-IDEO. The founders of the company were ex-IDEO. What I found very interesting at that company was our process, like the way we approached our problems, from how the company was organized, the departments, all the way to how we conducted research with our potential customers and informed our product roadmap, et cetera. After that company, I joined a company called Obvious Corp that built out products like Medium and Branch and Lyft, a habit tracking app, which is now called Coach.me. And there was a lot of that thinking there as well. Also ex-IDEO people, and aside from that, like ex-Twitter leadership, et cetera.
Sure.
And I started noticing this pattern from companies that I had worked with, whether it was in a full-time or contract capacity, that had people who thought of the purpose of businesses as to solve problems and make money while doing that, versus companies that just felt like, especially in San Francisco, that they just came out of nowhere because San Francisco gave them this notion of like, I can just make anything and get rich quick. Right?
Is this that the difference between solving hard problems and solving real problems? And oftentimes the hard problems are just like mining for minerals on an asteroid.
The hard problems versus real problems or do things that matter is like a really touchy subject. Yeah. But like my divide was companies that actually knew what it was to be a business and companies that had no understanding of what that was, right? And one commonality I saw was the former companies that understood what it was to be a business, to some extent, whether or not they worked with designers before, understood that there was some value in that space. Whether they can like define it in words or not, they just knew that, okay, we should probably have like some designer around. Maybe as a graphic designer, like you get one from like the art school, whatever it was, they knew that they should have that mind there, right? Now I'd say over the past like 3 to 5 years, you have started seeing new job titles appear like product design, design director, head of design. It seems like the design community is still trying to figure out what their C-level title should be. It's like you hear CCO, like Chief Creative Officer, CDO, Chief Design, CXO, Chief Experience, all these different random stuff. Like obviously the titles are relevant, but you're noticing that companies actually feel that maybe designers should be higher up in the company, right? And to answer your question about like why I feel that change is happening now, there are many things at play. One is obviously just like technology itself. It's becoming so much more cheaper for people to get ideas out there. That if someone's in a crowded space or in a space that's quickly going to be recognized by other people, the things that you have to differentiate your product, like your tech infrastructure, is gradually becoming harder and harder and harder to discern, right? So what actually separates you from your competition besides how good you are at listening to your customers and actually building problems and solutions for them? Sorry, building solutions, don't build problems for your customers.
build problems, got it. I'm on it.
Build problems that only you know how to solve.
Yeah.
That's a good strategy.
Is your brand and your approach, right? And to some extent, that is part of what designers are trying to do. We're trying to solve problems, but we're also trying to like do it in a way that gets people to love us. Love us. Hard.
Full stop.
Yeah.
Okay. Another topic then that I'm curious about is the difference between managing people and managing ideas, right? You've got this classic fallacy that great players are just going to make great coaches. And we know in sports that's oftentimes not true. It's also not true in kind of any professional environment, right? Yeah. You've got a situation where a lot of different companies, big and small companies, do this, where you'll have someone who's contributing at a really high level, say they're a killer designer, and the company promotes them into a people management role, where they're then stripped out of, they're no longer doing the work that they were doing really well. Instead, they're now leading people, and that may not be the thing that they really should be doing, or the way that they should be contributing to their company. How do you solve for that? Do you have thoughts on this? How do companies prevent from keeping people away from the thing that they're really good at, while still allowing those people to be leaders in their space or be inspirational to their teammates?
Yeah. So, I think there's some quote that says like the number one reason why people leave is because of their managers. Yeah. And it could be that your manager is just a straight up asshole. It could be that your manager doesn't know how to manage, which is probably more common. And I don't know, a whole bunch of different reasons. But I feel like the promotional track for designers and probably other roles within companies needs to be revisited, because there's not much incentive for, I mean, obviously there are some organizations that are working towards this, but generally speaking, there's not enough incentive to not take a promotional track that involves managing people, right? So when I came out here, like the idea was you start off as like a visual designer or interaction designer or whatever it is. You become a product designer, maybe a design lead on a project, design manager, design director, or whatever it is, right? But the concept of the promotional track was pretty much tied to how many people are beneath you. It's like, you know, when you're design lead, you're not leading people, but like you are leading a project that 2 other people are on.
Right.
As soon as you hit management, like you have 3 or 5 people under you, right? And then, you know, this promotional track is obviously tied to comp as well. Like, you know, maybe it's stock refreshers or more pay or whatever it is. But then you look at, I actually admire the people who know that they will not make effective managers and just stay away like from that entirely.
Yeah.
Right?
Because then you end up in a situation, regardless of the discipline, right?
Yeah.
Where you have people who are no longer doing the thing that they're really good at, and you end up with compromised people management, which is you know, that harms many more people.
Yeah, but then the issue is those people who recognize that they're not going to make effective managers, they feel stuck at their current company because, you know, unless that company has a way of rewarding them for having more investment into the management of ideas rather than people, then there's no place for them, and then they leave, right? And then the company loses that great talent, and they wonder why that person left, right? And then there are people who are aware of this, but feel like they can trick themselves into, or maybe they're talked into by their manager or like a fellow peer that like, no, you can do this. Like, you know, you have the skill sets. Like, I see you with your puppies. Like, yeah, you can definitely do this with humans too, right? And then
That's
they go.
usually a highly predicting factor.
Right.
And then they go and they do it, right? And sometimes it works out for them, but more often than not, it does not.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly how I couldn't give you an answer. I wish I could, because then I would just like, I don't know, go like charge companies to tell them how to solve this or whatnot. But I feel like it starts with leadership understanding that not everyone's cut out to be a manager, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And you know, there is the aspect of managing people, which takes someone who has people skills, right? And can recognize issues at work that can pertain to the project you're on, but also like just interpersonal issues. Like, you know, maybe I'm an introvert and I don't really like working in this side of the office. Like, how do you handle such a situation, right? And then also bringing up the concept of managing ideas. You know, like, you know, I think Twitter had a role years ago. I think they still have it. Principal designer. Josh Brewer, I believe, was like the first one at Twitter for that. And like he was saying, like, you know, what he had carved out for himself was he recognized that he did not actually want to manage people. But what he wanted to do was to have more of an impact on the product itself and kind of like set design standards for the company without going into leadership, right? And I feel like that can be fleshed out a bit more. So I think that's how we could approach it.
Onto a topic that is on, I mean, everyone is talking about this, especially in this area, and that's the topic of diversity in hiring issues across Silicon Valley, and I'm sure that this would extend to pretty much any part of the country where there's a lot of tech-centric work happening.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with a quote just to kind of set this up. A gentleman named Leslie Miley, a black gentleman who was in a leadership role at Twitter. He wrote a post on Medium, and he actually quoted Mark S. Lucky, who's another black gentleman who wrote this. Without a variety of voices contributing ideas, the workplace becomes a homogenized environment where potential brilliance may never be achieved. Diversity should rightly be seen as a benefit to growth, not an obstruction to avoid. How do you react to this notion of diversity of experience and thought being something that can actually help companies be more competitive, aside from just being something that helps, you know, make their diversity numbers look good when they have to release them?
I mean, I believe it's true. Like, so background on me, I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I moved to Baltimore when I was a kid, but before that, I lived 2 years in Sweden. My father just lived in Sweden for whatever reason. I honestly don't know, like, I think like 2 or 3 decades or whatever. But my mom met him there on vacation with her friend.
Okay.
And my dad, being the romantic that he was like, my mom was like singing in like some like, I don't know, place, and there was a piano that my dad happened to be on and was playing that piano. And then, you know, within 6 months was dating my mom, and within a year was married to her.
Your dad is not Jeff Goldblum, just by chance.
He's not.
Phew.
He's not.
Okay.
But
I didn't think
my
it was. I
dad,
just
my
wanted to be
dad
sure.
wasn't 60 and my mom 19, so that's good. But anyway, Yeah, so after I was born, I guess my dad was still in Sweden, so we went back there. I was born in Brooklyn, went back to Sweden.
Yeah.
And then we came back to New York. My dad finally moved back to the US. And I spent 2 years in Venezuela, in Trinidad. So my mom's half Venezuelan, half Trinidadian. And she wanted me to be exposed to that culture. And like, meet my grandparents and like cousins and all that stuff. So by the time I was like 12 years old, I had lived in 3 continents and had learned 3 languages, right? I don't know Spanish and Swedish anymore, so don't test me.
I was just about to ask.
Yeah, I couldn't answer. But it was interesting. Like I didn't know it then, but I realized by the time I got to school, the benefits of having that I guess exposure to different cultures. And,
Yeah.
and my father is also Nigerian, right? So I also had that experience as well, right?
Yes.
And all the things that come along with that, like 419. So when I was in high school and I took Spanish class, like it was great because like for like the first 1 or 2 years, I basically didn't pay attention in class and would just like do a test and all that, and then we got to like conjugations and all that shit, and then I was like, yeah, fuck this, and then I came out. But I realized that like I should have actually been studying. But regardless, it didn't hit me until like high school and like leaving high school how much of an impact like seeing those different cultures had to me, had for me, right? I felt like I could see the world just a little bit more clear. Like I had other perspectives. Growing up, like I lived in an area where I was the only black person and I was surrounded by a bunch of not black people.
Mm-hmm.
That tends to happen when you live in Scandinavia. And then
Sure.
likewise in Venezuela and Trinidad, like I was again darker than most of the other people around me, right? And I learned to just like work with that, but I also learned some of the benefits about like just seeing other people's cultures. So when I moved out to San Francisco and I really got deep into design, I remember there was a time where we were designing something, and it was on mobile, and one of the designers was trying to do this effect. I can't remember what it was, but like it was pretty constraining, and there was like a big chunk of text inside there. And this product was at some point going to be localized to other countries. And I realized just looking at that thing that I was like, dude, like in English that's going to be fine, obviously, because you just typed it in English.
Yeah.
In Spanish it might even be fine too, but dude, like I saw some Finnish, and if you convert that shit to Finnish, your design's broken, right? And he's like, Finnish, and I'm like, well, that's a language, and we're gonna have to support it at some point.
Finnish fucks it up?
Yes.
It's a classic design.
Is it really?
No. But
It's a design.
It is now.
it is now. Yeah.
Design
It is
convention.
now. So
Please,
anyway,
Fred, please use
yeah,
this.
he went to Google
anytime.
Translate. He translated the thing. He put it back in, and
FFITU.
sure enough, it like screwed the hell out of his design, right? So I wouldn't put that as a staple for why you should diversify teams, so that there can be someone on the team that says Finnish breaks your design, right?
Sure.
But it was just like part of one of the things that came up because I had seen something else at some point, right? So like if you try your hardest to like scale that little like weird example to the benefits it can have on product teams as a whole, is when you have diversity of people, you have diversity of thoughts, you have diversity of experiences, minds, et cetera, right? And if the goal is to, if you think of any project or any company or any thing that you're doing as trying to match an outcome to an intent, right? Like a user, whoever you're building for has an intent that they're going for, right? And they expect a certain outcome from that. And the goal of your product is to at least hit that outcome. And in the best of scenarios, exceed that outcome, and then that delta is your product, that's your brand, right? And that's why people come back to your product.
Yeah.
The more people you have thinking about ways to exceed that outcome, the higher likelihood you will actually come across that idea, right? And you hear companies like Facebook always say that, like, we don't arrive at these great solutions just like the first time. We arrive because of brute force. Like we literally fucking tried everything, right? And if you have everyone in the room, you will try everything and you will find that solution. If you look around and everyone around you looks just like you, or and looks just like you doesn't even mean like a white male in San Francisco, right? It could mean like someone who has all the same interests as you, right? Or speaks the same language as you, then you're only ever gonna be able to think in that line of experience. And if you're trying to solve for everyone, which is the goal of a lot of products, then by definition, you will only ever solve for people who look or behave like you.
And everyone
Right.
in this world is a much broader category than it was 10 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
When I went into audition for the ads, I saw every white dude I've ever seen in New York auditioning for that ad. It never occurred to them to put someone other than two white dudes in that ad. And the reason was it was pre-iPhone, and there was still this legacy of computers being big ticket items for people who already had an interest and
Right.
probably had some education, which limits the demographic of people who are using it. When the iPhone happened, suddenly everyone in the world has a computer in their hand. And it became much, much more diverse and democratic, cross-cultural in every way. And you want to reach those users. You can't just have the mindset of what we had in 2006.
You need to start reflecting your customer base in more
I mean,
ways.
if only from the mercenary point of view of wanting to reach as many people as possible. How could I know what someone in Portugal needs from their internet? Or for that matter, in the United States, in a rural area that has never seen broadband and never had the internet until 2010 or whatever, when they started getting it out of the air or whatever like that.
Jared, I would love to talk to you about all this stuff for a lot longer, but we've got to move on.
Oh, I took up all that time at the end. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much.
What a monster.
Everyone, please give a round of applause for Jared Erondu. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, man. Take care. Watch your step.
Our final guest of the evening is currently a design ambassador for Greylock Partners and a product advisor for several of the apps on your home screens, including Medium and Airbnb. She was also the design lead for the Siri experience for Apple TV and Apple's HomeKit, which is why I'll be asking all of her questions to her using the Apple TV remote. Please give a round of applause to Lia Napolitano.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, this is so exciting.
Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm having fun. So
Yeah.
I'll just say
Let
that.
me just say
Awesome.
you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. Thank you.
Agreed.
Well done, sir.
Your presentation earlier was fantastic, so congratulations on that. And I just wanted to ask, what were you doing as a kid that got you? What were you interested in as a kid? And are there any lines you can draw to the work you do today?
I was really into Command and Conquer 3 on my parents' Mac.
I still see those battlefields when I close my eyes.
Right? Very haunting. Very visceral.
Wow.
Yeah, and really into, I'm actually, some clip art program that we had, I would make cards and print them for all of the friends I never had to give them to. And
It's so sad.
yeah, no, so and what else? Nope, that was it. That was it. Printing out cards for no friends and playing Command and Conquer.
Command and Conquer.
And watching your ads. Dude. But that was not when I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. It's okay if it is.
No, I'm
That's right.
ruining it.
I'm comfortable with the fact that I'm hurtling towards death. It's fine.
You touched on this a little bit in your presentation, but I'm curious, are there, if not products that are in the market, what is exciting to you about the direction that we're going? I mean, because so much of what you were doing at Apple and so much of what you presented about has to do with this sort of science fiction world that we're all chasing as sensors and all kinds of different technology continue to get added to devices that we are now wearing on us all the time. What is it that's exciting to you about the direction that consumer devices are going?
A lot. I feel like there are a bunch of really interesting technologies right now that are reaching some kind of maturation, and at least there's public awareness. Virtual reality has come a lot further than, I mean, than in the past 3 years than it had since, the 80s when Jaron Lanier's apparently coined the term. He's a really fascinating guy. He plays a lot of weird musical instruments, and his description of an ideal virtual reality experience is where you think that you are a lobster and you're using other parts of your body to manipulate different lobster limbs that you don't customarily have. And
I have this dream every night.
every night. And it's interesting because he was like, yeah, and in that kind of virtual experience, you actually come out feeling like you have ghost lobster limbs afterwards. So anyway, I feel like it's moved past one guy talking about ghost lobster limbs to something a little bit more, a lot of investment around it. But then, so that is what's exciting. I think there are a lot of really interesting pieces of technology. What maybe is not exciting, or this contrast, is that working on HomeKit, there's just this realization that this is the 1% of the 1%'s problem. This is Maybe we're just
Oh,
designing.
then I'm very interested.
Yes, tell me more.
Go on.
It's a yeah, you get an actual diamond medallion if you set it up correctly.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but there was this feeling or this awareness of I think this is really cool. I totally want to walk in my home and be like, Siri, make it more romantic in here, and for Frank Sinatra to turn on, and then my HomeKit, like my Philips Hue bulbs turn red, and then my robot butler comes out and
Right,
says,
the robot from,
"Here are your
Rocky III
roses."
comes
Like
out, yeah.
that's what I would like, but I also recognize that
Are you trying to make it romantic for you and your robot?
I'm gonna just leave that open.
All right.
Command and Conquer 3,
That's right.
Cards for No Friends.
Yeah,
you
I
do
got
the
you.
math.
All right.
The tone.
I understand.
So I think that's really cool, but then also I think the only other person other than me that would be really excited to use that is like, I don't know, Eddie Q. So like the Apple executives who can afford to have this whole setup. And so I think it's cool, but nothing is really revolutionary when it has such a high price tag and is so inaccessible to so many people. So I think it's exciting because we have a lot of really cool technologies. I think a challenge that we can overcome is that it's really hard to get different services to work together still.
Yeah.
Companies like Viv, and I think what Siri is doing by opening up the API is awesome. Like
Yeah.
there are these things that are saying let's knit our data sources and our experiences together, but there are a lot
Into
of
like a kind of Skynet.
Skynet, so to speak. Oh yeah, and then there's the other
That sounds
downside,
like a good
which
idea,
is
though.
It always seems like a good idea.
Agreed. But then there's this other downside, which is even if people can afford it and it does become ubiquitous, it sounds like Skynet, and privacy is a huge issue.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Right, and so even I think the reason that that any company does well to be cautious about having all of your devices collecting data and exchanging and handshaking is that is a really, really important mesh of things that ultimately describe you and can be used in really horrible ways. And haven't we all seen Minority Report or like any other movie? So.
Privacy aside, there is this gap right now between reality and expectations. You know, if you've got, whether you're using Siri or Alexa or Google, or for those of you who might be using Cortana for whatever reason,
Get out.
you're in the wrong conference, I think. But you know, there's a gap between the experience that you're sort of promised,
Yeah.
and then the reality of it, which is, you know, if you don't speak like the guy in the ad, then oftentimes your phone doesn't understand you very well.
Yeah. Not great.
How do you, as someone who's designing and creating these kinds of products, do you anticipate these breakdowns in customer experience? Can you kind of soften the blow, or how do you think about that kind of stuff?
So I think that you can do, like accents and voices are better than they used to be. I think there's at least more attention toward training. I think the promise of any voice assistant has always been you talk to it. Like we all know how to talk, and it turns out the computers don't know how you talk. And
We have to learn how to talk to the computer before it learns
Right.
We adapt faster. than
Right,
it
and
does.
for a long time it was even worse. Or it was you need to learn how to talk to the computer in the right accent, and you need to be in the correct band. Like you need to be old enough for it to understand you,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
super sad because kids love talking. Kids don't care if the voice computer is bad. They just
Right.
want to talk to it because it's a voice computer.
I remember reading endless scripts from the like Dragon Natural Speak.
Yeah.
And like Windows 95. It never worked, but I was excited about it.
Right,
But
just
it's
really
not, we're
amped.
not that far away from that.
So I think there are things that you can do. I think if in addition to just training on an individual's voice, you were paying attention to their location, I don't know, even the place where the device was bought, where it was activated, maybe biased toward accents that are known in that region, but then that would require a lot of like voice training beyond the corpus
Yeah.
that currently exists. And so I think the answer might be a lot more data. I also think that the reason it's a really hard thing to come by is like that's just a lot more data.
Right.
So I think some
So
voice
the
in
opening of
particular-
some of these APIs is very helpful.
It's
right?
it's
the sharing
yeah,
of the APIs. Yeah.
definitely, and I think that's really cool. Training voice data is hard, and that will always hard. I think voice is just never going to be perfect, and that being the case, I'm sort of bummed about it, but it won't. And I think that's when we can start looking to other devices to say, okay, if I can't pick up this signal from your voice, is there something else that we can use? Like, is there a screen that you could input some more details? Oh, that's cool. Like, and then just have these things play more nicely together can help when voice itself is not sufficient.
Well, you're kind of touching on another question I had, which is, are there other sensors? What else, in terms of technology that can be added to the device, can help build that experience so that I can feel like I'm able to interact with, you know, my laptop the way that Tony Stark interacts with Jarvis?
That would be sick.
That would be super cool.
That would be awesome.
I've tried. It doesn't work quite yet.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So I think that when computer vision is better, which like I don't know when that's gonna be, or at the scale that I might expect and hope as Tony Stark, that would be useful. Until then, I think gesture recognizers, like when Kinect took this concept we saw with Nintendo Wii, and they were like, yeah, okay, cool, you can move these joysticks around, but what if you can, like, we can make your skeleton?
Yeah.
I think that was a really big breakthrough, especially, there are some environments where that's really useful, and there are some environments, like, where it's completely unnecessary. There was a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he had designed the whole gestural system for Minority Report and started a company. He was super excited. He's like, I'm leaving my, my position at the MIT Media Lab. I'm going to start a company where we make this a consumer technology. And everyone was like, but why do I have to move my arms? Like that, I don't want to do this. And then it didn't work out. So I did not answer that question. Gesture recognizing is cool, and I think right now we're seeing a lot of little tiny sensor devices, a lot of them designed to be wearables. There are some that tell you to sit up straight. There are some that tell you to wake up because you've been sleeping well or poorly. Yes.
I'm sitting up straight, sorry.
Up, awake. So I've seen in wearables a lot of these tiny sensors being deployed to try to corral you into doing the right thing. Sensors and form factors, but yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff.
What is the sit-up straight sensor?
Where
do you see that?
Shine. I've seen maybe.
But where do you put it on your body?
Flip it. I have no idea.
Okay.
I was not compelled to buy one.
No. Okay.
But yeah.
I want to ask you one more question, and that's that, given your proximity to this world and all of these technologies that are on the far edges of what's possible right now, do you give us some examples of just catastrophic failure, stuff that has not worked as planned, stuff like the lipstick machine that you showed earlier.
Just watch all of Simon Gertz's videos. She literally is referred to as the queen of shitty robots, and there is no better YouTube channel, none. So things that are catastrophic, I don't know. Off the top of my head.
Or do you see anyone? You don't have to name companies, but any places that we're maybe going that are just not good ideas?
I don't know. So I've seen and heard about a few different VR companies' concepts for like experiences in VR, and I haven't experienced anything that totally blew my mind. I feel sort of strange about VR, and I want to just do a bunch of experiments with it so that I stop being such a Luddite. I feel weird about it because the thought of like completely separating myself from the world. Already like reading is really escapist, or watching TV is really escapist, and I'm down with that. Like, and I'm also okay pretending that looking at my computer is productive and not escapist. But the thought of like actually sequestering myself from the world, and until we have a really good sense of the bounds of a room that you're in with a headset, like not being able to move seems really weird and uncanny valley to me. So I'm excited for whatever fixes that. But I don't think that's catastrophic. I think also all these problems, even the Google Glass and what they were trying to do with augmented reality is super cool. And all these projects have some of the smartest minds working on it, and they really care. And I think when things don't work out as expected, part of it is like the vision is there, but so is bureaucracy. And sometimes the vision isn't fully there yet because we're just excited. We love technology and we don't know what to do with it yet, but we're going to do it. We're going to do a thing. It's all educational and really cool. Yeah.
I sincerely wish we had more time to talk, but we've got to go and wrap this up. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us at the Late Afternoon Show. Thank you to all of our guests, Jared Erondu, Lia Napolitano, and Mr. John Hodgman. Give everyone a round of applause.
Have you read a book?